I grew up on a farm in Ontario during a time when 2 or 3 generations shared the family home. They also shared the daily chores and all the ups and downs of farm life in the Depression years. Grandma and Grandpa lived with us, and we all played a role in looking after them. After Grandpa died, Grandma and I became very close. She was 90 years old to my 9, but we still seem to have a lot in common. We both loved the outdoors, and I often joined her on short walks around the farm. Sultry summer afternoons frequently found us in the big front parlor. With the windows open to catch whatever breeze came our way, we had a front row seat for nature's display of country beauty. We also had a big Edison gramophone with round cylinder records. I would wind it up and Grandma would sit nearby, rocking and tapping her foot to the music as we both tried to sing along. Nowadays, when a warm summer breeze comes wafting through the house, I find myself humming many of those same tunes: Red Wing, Beautiful Isle of Somewhere, and Don't Bring Lulu. Based on her many years of experience, Grandma was fond of quoting things that she thought a little girl should know. When she saw me trying to whistle one day, she cautioned me, "A whistling girl and a crowing hen will always come to some bad end." She also advised, "Whatever you do, don't ever wear red shoes when you grow up." In those days, women who wore a lot of red were supposedly of questionable character. These days, red is a popular color, but each time I shop for shoes, Grandma's words come back to me: "Don't ever wear red shoes." And I never have, even though sometimes I'm tempted. Grandma also believed little girls should be seen and not heard. There were times, however, when she did like me to be heard. Those were the times when I read to her. And since I was a good reader for my age and I loved doing it, I enjoyed the experience as much as she did. She always listened attentively, smiling and nodding her agreement when the story pleased her. On the other hand, when she was unhappy with a turn of events or a dishonest character, she would frown and utter words of wrath toward the villain in question. One of her favorite sayings at those times was, "He needs the boots put to him." Most of this reading took place on winter evenings when the younger folks in the family were out for a social evening with neighbors. Grandma and I usually stayed home, but that was all right with me. When the reading was finished, it was time for bed, and since I was never eager to go to my upstairs room alone, I'd ask, "Grandma, can I sleep in your bed tonight?" She always answered, "Of course, child, come along," reaching out for me with her comforting arms. Grandma's bedroom was downstairs and warmer than mine, and she had a feather bed. She also had a candy bowl on her dresser, which was always half full of humbugs, but I had to wait until she offered me some. I learned from her to never take without permission. What a joy it was to finally climb into that big feather bed and sink down into its soft warmth. Sometimes I would run my fingers along the big handmade quilt that covered the bed. Some of the patches were cut from old dresses of mine and some of Grandma's too. Grandma was too old to kneel for prayers, so we said them together in bed, and she assured me that God would still hear us even if we weren't on our knees. Then we would talk for a few minutes. She often told me how much she missed Grandpa. Lying in that bed, I learned to never, for any reason, tell a lie, and to never be afraid of hard work because it's good for you and makes you strong. We never talked for long, though, because once that feather bed enveloped me, I was too drowsy for talk. It was comfortable, just like Grandma. In later years, Grandma became confined to that feather bed every day, and one of my chores was feeding her the midday meal. I can see the plate yet. Her favorite was mashed potatoes, fried eggs, and sliced tomatoes fresh from the garden. When I was 11 years old, the time came for Grandma to leave us. I wasn't in the feather bed that night. I was asleep in my own bed when I was awakened and told she was gone. I couldn't believe it at first. Grandmothers were always supposed to be there, I thought, to share their words of wisdom and their feather beds. How I missed her in those days that followed. Her birthday was August 2nd, and each year on that day, I think of her more than usual. If I sit quietly and close my eyes, I can see us in the big parlor with me operating the gramophone and Grandma rocking and tapping her foot softly to the music. I see her face. I hear her voice. I hear us saying our prayers together. Most of all, I remember the softness of Grandma's feather bed, and I wish I could sleep in it just one more night. Time has changed this house. The parlor is now the TV room, roads carved through fields where cows once grazed, and when my grandchildren come to visit, there is no feather bed to share. Still, there are memories to tell of a less hurried time, a simple time that allowed a child and her grandmother to learn from one another.